A waste-charging pilot scheme starts later this year. More promising news in the search for the missing Malaysia Airlines jet. And pro-Russian demonstrators storm government buildings in eastern Ukraine.
Good evening. 7 housing estates will take part in a voluntary waste-charging pilot scheme this year. It will give the government some practical references in how to implement a rubbish tax that could be introduced in 2 years' time at the earliest.
This municipal solid waste charging pilot scheme, with 20 blocks from 7 housing estates volunteering to take part in it, is the government's first step in figuring it all out.
The trial scheme is to test out the logistics and also what are the supporting facilities indeed, and what are the response of the residents in relation to the quantity-based charging.
Wong said up to 90% of Hong Kong's residential buildings have estate management, so it's a good first trial. But he didn't say whether the experiment would be extended to standalone buildings later on. The 7 estates, which include both public and private housing, will begin the 5-month trial within the next 2 months. A baseline survey will be carried out during the month before each estate starts its trial. Different estates will try out different options, including a volume-based per-household option. For this, each household will have to buy official rubbish bags from the property management. 2 other building-based options will calculate charges for the rubbish disposed of either by weight or bin numbers in a collective way, then divided by the number of units in the building. Because this is only a trial, the money so collected will not be going to the government. Residents of the housing estates taking part in the pilot scheme will have to decide with their property management company whether the trial will involve actual monetary transactions. Alternatively, the property management can simply make note of how much, theoretically, each household or building would have been charged. And there's also the question of what to do with the money if residents are really charged. 4 housing blocks at Amoy Gardens in Ngau Tau Kok have signed up for the pilot scheme. They'll be trying out all 3 waste charge options, and residents seem positive about taking part in the program.
It will become a reference price for us, and also if the price is affordable, I think I will support the price.
The chairman of the Estates Owners Corporation admitted because it's only a trial, there's no real incentive to force everyone to take part properly. But he said the estate will try to persuade the residents to contribute to the trial so that useful data can be collected for reference.
LegCo President Zhang Yuk-sing has again commented on suggestions that Hong Kong can temporarily adopt the mainland's state security law under local legislation of Article 23 of the Basic Law is completed. He called the idea unfeasible. Vicky Kung reports.
LegCo President Zhang Yuk-sing today attended a talk on party politics at the Hong Kong Institute for Education. For the second day in a row, he responded to remarks made by Basic Law Committee member Rao Ge-ping in a magazine interview. Rao, who is also a law professor at Peking University, cited other mainland scholars' suggestions that the SAR can temporarily adopt the mainland state security law until Article 23 legislation is completed.
Of course, it is inconsistent with the Basic Law to apply any national law in China apart from all those listed in Annex 3. Will it be a violation of one country, 2 systems? Of course. It would be a violation. But that has not happened. And I don't think that it is going to happen at all.
Zhang also brushed aside concerns that such opinions may threaten or undermine the independence of Hong Kong's legal system. He pointed out that Beijing has never brought up such suggestions.
Those, according to Professor Rao, those comments came from some academics, and we know what academics are.
Zhang also believes that introducing party politics into Hong Kong cannot make the city more governable. This is because he thinks the existing government does not have much support from different political groups in the LegCo. Meanwhile, lawmaker Priscilla Leung said academic discussions about the implementation of national laws in the SAR under special circumstances is nothing new.
Regarding what has been said by Professor Rao Ge-ping I personally regard it as quite a common discussion within the academic circle of the constitutional law areas in China.
She added under the Basic Law, such national laws should only be implemented in Hong Kong when certain circumstances arise, prompting Beijing to believe that the country's basic security is under threat. Vicky Kong, TVB News.
Well, according to a survey commissioned by the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong, 72% of respondents think the 2017 chief election should comply with the Basic Law. Meanwhile, the DAB has welcomed the political reform proposal put forward by 18 academics last week. As Jenny Lam reports, the party will present its own proposal following internal discussions.
A survey commissioned by the DAB asked 1,005 people last month about universal suffrage in the 2017 chief executive election. It found that 72% of the respondents agreed that the election should comply with the Basic Law. That's an increase of 3 percentage points from the previous month. They were also asked if they thought that candidates should be nominated by more than half of the members of a nominating committee. 56% said yes. That's a 3 percentage drop from the previous month. On the Occupy Central movement, 66% said they were against it, up 3 percentage points when compared with the previous survey. The DAB believes that support for Occupy Central is falling because Hong Kong people saw the chaos in Taiwan following the occupation of the Legislative Yuan by student protesters. Meanwhile, the party welcomes the political reform proposal put forward by 18 academics last week. Under the proposal, anyone who secures support from 2% of the electorate would become a potential candidate in the 2017 chief executive election. Should these potential candidates garner the support of 1/8 of the nominating committee members, they would be able to run in the election. DAB Vice Chairman Horace Cheung says the academics' motive is to try their best to comply with the Basic Law and relevant decisions of the National People's Congress Standing Committee. The DAB Central Committee will meet later this month to work out the party's own political reform proposal. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel today kicked off his first visit to China since taking office. He's expected to have a rare tour of China's first aircraft carrier, becoming the first foreign visitor to go aboard the ship. Hagel arrived in the eastern port city of Qingdao following a trip to Japan. He was welcomed by the U.S. ambassador to China, Max Baucus. A senior defense official said Hagel requested to see the aircraft carrier, which is based in Qingdao. China spent a decade refurbishing the Soviet-era carrier bought from Ukraine before commissioning it as the Liaoning in 2012. Earlier this year, the Liaoning completed sea trials in the South China Sea. During his 3-day stay in China, Hagel will meet with senior officials in Beijing before traveling to Mongolia.
Tensions are spilling over in eastern Ukraine as pro-Russian demonstrators clash with Ukrainian riot police. Some protesters have seized government buildings in the region, and Ukraine's defense ministry says a Ukrainian naval officer was shot dead by a Russian soldier in Crimea. The developments are stoking fears of a wider Russian incursion into the region. The protests by pro-Russian demonstrators are growing more forceful and more widespread. In Donetsk, several thousand pro-Russian supporters rallied against the government in Kiev. Our main positions are not to join the European Union, not to head towards NATO, not to fight, says this protester named Svetlana. I do not recognize the current government because now we have oligarchs in charge again. The old ones are gone, the new ones arrived, says Asya, another demonstrator. In Luhansk, just 30 kilometers from the Russian border, police have closed down entrances into the city after hundreds of pro-Russian protesters broke into state security headquarters and seized weapons. A similar situation is unfolding in Kharkiv, where hundreds of demonstrators tussled with police. One demonstrator managed to evade riot police and appeared on the first floor of the regional administration building, waving a Russian flag. Separatist sentiment has sparked frequent protests since Ukraine's Russia-friendly president was ousted in February and Russia seized Crimea. Half of Ukraine's residents are ethnic Russians, many of whom believe the country's acting authorities are Ukrainian nationalists bent on oppressing Russians. Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk today called the protesters radicals who are part of a plan to destabilize the country. The Kremlin argues that Russia has the right to protect Ukraine's Russian-speaking population. Russia has moved large contingents of troops near the Ukrainian border, and speculation is strong that unrest in eastern Ukraine could be used as a pretext for a broader Russian incursion. Promising news in the hunt for the missing Malaysia Airlines plane today. Australia says that underwater signals detected by one of its ships are consistent with audible pings from aircraft black boxes. But as Sonia Artero reports, verification could take days.
Today marks 30 days since flight MH370 vanished without a trace. This is also the day the jetliner's black box batteries are supposed to stop working. So, finding two new acoustic leads in the nick of time has everyone hoping it will unravel this haunting mystery.
The towed pinger locator deployed from the Australian defence vessel Ocean Shield has detected signals consistent with those emitted by aircraft black boxes.
Here's why this lead is so promising. The first signal detected was held for more than 2 hours before the Ocean Shield lost contact. But then the signal was heard again for about 13 minutes.
Clearly, this is a most promising lead. And again, I would ask all of you to treat this information cautiously and responsibly until such time as we can provide an unequivocal determination.
Given the treacherous ocean conditions, confirming the find will take days. Here's the game plan to be 100% sure.
If they gain another acoustic event on that towed pinger locator, that will be the trigger at the moment to launch the autonomous underwater vehicle with a more accurate sonar and potentially camera for mapping and visually looking at the ocean floor.
As for the pulse signals that Haishan 01 detected for 2 days, China has dispatched 4 vessels to retrace where those signals originated. Meantime, so many relatives of the missing refuse to believe they'll never see their loved ones again.
Denial inevitably comes out because grief did not come out.
Such is the case of Sarah Bach, whose American boyfriend was on board the ill-fated flight that she believes was hijacked.
Yeah, I think the scariest thing I can think of is that there is never closure, right? If they just stay missing forever, that would be impossible to deal with.
They say time heals all wounds, but in this case, any ounce of evidence will help grieving families. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
And still to come in our main news tonight. Indians go to the polls. Indonesian maid Rihanna in town to help police investigate. And royal visit to New Zealand.